So now here, if you look at the slide, are my goals well defined? Then the question is personal aspirations. Then the question is business sustainability and size, right? So this is something that is very important again. Don't confuse yourself with opportunity to what and where you are focusing, right? You need to have a bigger picture, but then you need to always think about sustainability and size. Why this is important is, at this point, what do we have with you, right? That is what you need to look at very clearly. This is what grounds you, right? Where I want to go, why I want to do this. If that part is clear, the next part that you're looking at is what do I want to build? And when you look at what do you want to build, you first ask that question, sustainability and size. This sustainability and size is something that you can keep reworking on, right? Because if I usually when I talk to student entrepreneurs, they say, "What do you want to build?" Oh, I want to build $1 million company. I want to build $1 billion company. Doesn't mean anything to anybody, right? I don't know what does it mean at all, right? That you're doing a billion. Yes, it's a nice idea or a nice thought process to say, yes, I want to build this, but that's not how it works. What I mean by sustainability and size is, first of all, are you able to get the first five customers? Are you able to sustain these five customers? Are you able to get the first three or four employees? Are you able to get the first two partners or co-founders that you can work with? These are the sustainability and size questions that you need to ask. So when you talk of sustainability and size, you typically look at it from a bottom-up approach, right? Now, your aspirations might be top-down, or your end vision, your goal might be top-down. So you need to wear both of these hats, kind of in tandem. Maybe at one point you think about how large or how big the business can be. At the same time, what really works in the real world is a bottom-up approach. That is, you look at what is there right now. What is the next step you can take? What is the next step you can take? Sometimes opportunities come and you can take 5 steps together, right? You can jump. But then not always is it possible, right? You say somebody said investors. I saw in the chat, what's most important is investors. No, no, no. Investor is a consequence. Please understand that investment, funding is a consequence. It is not the goal. Okay, you cannot start a company thinking I need investors, I need to get funding. That is not your strategy. That cannot be your strategy. Your strategy has to be value for yourself, next value for your co-founders, value for your team who's working with you to build this or make this happen, then value for your first customer, then value for a larger customer base, then value for the society at large. That is where the value for society at large, that's where I think Hasin was talking about battery being e-waste and all of that. That's value for the entire ecosystem, right? So that's something that we can look at a little later stage. I'm not saying that you should not look at it, but you cannot start with that for sure because you do not have the resources, sustainability, and scale to even think and talk about it. So when we go back to this thing, business sustainability and size, please approach it from a bottom-up approach, always, right? And then comes the most important question, tolerance for risk. If your personal aspirations are clear, your tolerance for risk automatically goes up. You can clearly see personal aspirations and tolerance for risk. So these two things, when your personal aspirations are clear, automatically your tolerance for risk will start changing. And from these two, you will be able to derive what kind of business you want to start, what kind of business you want to scale, and how sustainable and how big it can be. So this is the first thing. Once you're clear with these three questions, then you can go to the next thing. Do I have the right strategy? So here, first thing is clear definition. If you see in the second circle, we have something called as clear definition. At this point is when your idea comes into picture. So until now, we were talking about idea, and idea is something great, and it's the most important thing. No. Idea with context, idea with an implementation strategy is what we need, is what we should look at. And so, even before you have an idea, even before you have any of these things, the first circle should be ticked off. If you see that clearly, if you see the cascade in the book, I was mentioning about the question every entrepreneur must ask. Harvard Business Review. Amar Bhide is the author. Please note it down. Please read that. If not anything, if you don't have time for anything, read the first essay. If you don't have time to buy the book, it's already been open source now. I think you can get these PDFs online. It's a very small essay. It will take you about half an hour to go through it. Just try to go through it. In that, clear definition. So this is where you start defining your idea and strategy, right? So that is where the definition becomes clear. So now I would want you people to write down on a piece of paper what is your idea and how clear your idea is defined, right? Then automatically the questions of clarity will come into picture. What is the profitability? Does this have a potential for growth? What is the durability? How long can this business exist? And how fast can this business grow? These are the simple questions. So always you need to ask simple questions. This is the one. Harvard Business Review on entrepreneurship. Question every entrepreneur must ask. Okay. So just pick this up. You just search for this essay online. You'll find it. Just read through it. So here, now the second point. Now I think what Hashim was talking about. Hashim. Sorry, I forgot your name. Hassan, right? Hassan was talking about whether my business is going to be meaningful. So durability of the business. That was what he was thinking about, and because of which he was not even sure whether he should run this business or not. Right. So I think that's a very I would say I don't want to say it's wrong, but it is not very effective. The durability of the business that you're talking about is at least 15 years, according to me, 10 to 15 years, which is a long amount of time. And the profitability and potential for growth in the next 10 years for an electric vehicle business is massive, super massive. But then what is the question here is clear definition, right? If you say your definition is to build electric vehicles, then it is not a clear definition. Okay, I want to build electric vehicles is a definition which is not very clear. You should look at what is we'll go back to that point, right? Value proposition. Now the value has shifted from yourself or the aspiration of the entrepreneur to the value and aspiration of the customer or the ecosystem, right? So when you look at it that way, the question now you need to ask is the definition talking about value for my customers? So where is your unique selling point, or where is your what you call as ability to impact going to reside? Is it building of the vehicles? Is it your battery technology? Is it your marketing strategy? Is it your collaborations? Or is it your networking? What is it? That is what I mean by clear definition. So given your present situation, your sustainability and size that you want to build in, and the amount of risk you're willing to take, and the direction and aspiration that you have, you put out a clear definition. Okay, I'm going to build an electric vehicle, which is within, so many rupees of cost. And to achieve this, I'm going to innovate on a particular way of, building this machine or something like that, which becomes very specific. So that time, the problem that you're trying to attack is not about electric vehicles. It's not about batteries, but it is about bringing in that value, or it is about bringing in that leverage. So that is where I think it becomes more meaningful. So clear definition of your project would be very, very important. And then you look at durability, rate of growth, profitability. This is all a business plan kind of questions that you will continue to ask. I'll not go into it right now. We'll come to it when I help you build your campus. Okay. Can I execute the strategy? That's the third question we are trying to ask. Right? Now we are assuming that your goals are clear and you have a clear definition of your project. Then the third question you ask is, can I execute this strategy? So what is the first question that comes into mind? Can I make this happen? What's the first question that comes into mind?
Sir, the main thing is that for executing it, first we have to see if we are actually getting the resources, the availability of the resources, and then if we are moving in the right direction.
Yes, it's still vague, but first and foremost, you need a team, according to me, right? So
The resources also include the team, right? Yeah.
Exactly. No. That's what I'm saying. So typically what we do in startups or in doing a business is that we look at this whole thing in a very broad way. I don't want you to do it that way because let us be honest. You're starting as an individual, you're starting then as a team of 3 or 4 people, right? So, first, things will happen in the real world only if things are real, right? Only if things exist. So, that is what when you mean resources, what is the first thing? It is not your worry about how many electric vehicles you'll sell and all of that. That is all not the worry at this point. Yes, they are very important worries. But the first and foremost is, can you convince the person next to you to work with you? Can you convince the next 5 people to work with you? Then together, can you convince somebody to give you some products for a lesser price so that you can put it together? Then the next question is, can I make this product work? Then the question is, can I make this product sell, right? So that is how you start thinking. So from that way, you link these resources that you have to the scale, the question of scale, right? Business sustainability and size. How big can you build it? You link to that question, right? And only then you will go about seeing how you can structure the company. How many people do you want? How you can scale? And finally, what is your role as a founder? What will you do in this whole business? Because most of the times in business, what happens is the entrepreneur thinks that everything revolves around them, right? It doesn't work like that. It should not work like that because it is about an organization. This is about adding value. So if you think without you, this whole system is going to collapse, then the way you're structuring this whole business is incorrect. So if you look at it very, very carefully, why I put this slide is, if you look at the top left, are my goals well defined? That's the first question. And see where it ends, the founder's role, right? The two things are exactly the same. If your goals are well defined, then for yourself, then you know exactly what you will be doing in your company. What is your role in this? And these two should match with each other. And why this becomes important, I'll tell you. Not everybody in entrepreneurship is a leader. What I mean by leader is a people's person. Or somebody said management skills. I think Neha was telling management skills. Not everybody is that, right? So some people might be technology people, some people might be CTOs, some people might have great algorithms to build, some people might have great softwares to build and some devices. Somebody might be a great designer. Doesn't mean that they are not entrepreneurs. They are also entrepreneurs, but their role as founders are limited to a certain scope of things. But their vision is larger, so that's why they build a team and they put that together so that the vision happens. Founder, you need to find out where your maximum value is going to come in, and then you build a team. That is why you need a team. Together, you form this structure. So this is what is very, very important. Yes. So assignment. Okay, your assignment right now is take a screenshot of this entrepreneur's guide. Try and answer whatever questions you can answer in this. Right? Are my goals well defined? What are my personal aspirations? What kind of sustainability and size of business I would like to prefer to start with? Don't put $1 billion there. Let us take a horizon of, say, maybe 18 months, right? Let us take 18 months time and see. Okay, let us not take anything beyond 18 months. In 5 years, I want to become a $1 billion company. In 10 years, I want to become a $1 billion company. It's very easy to say. I am asking in the next 6 months, next 12 months, next 18 months, what kind of risk can you take? What can you do? That's what I want you to write there. Then come and define clearly in the next 18 months, what is it that you want to achieve? Okay? That's what I mean by clear definition of your idea. Then see what kind of investment might be needed, what is the durability of this, how we can scale it, rate of growth. Can this business go on for 10 years, or no, this is a business which I have to sell in 3 years? Those points you put in. Okay. And then what kind of team do you have already? What kind of team do you need? And what is your role? Just put in these points and we'll sync back by in another half an hour or so. Guys, I'm back. Okay. So actually, good that I came back home, because this is the book I was talking about. Howard Business. You will not need this session. This is a Bible for that. At least the first chapter. Please read through. All right. Okay. So back to work. We were talking about these aspects of your personal goals and aspirations, as well as how to structure your business strategy into scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk you through a few things about myself and what we do as a company, and you will get a fair idea of how you can pull out some information from that. So I am a mechanical engineer. I graduated sometime back in 2003. 2005. And sometime in 2003, I decided to start up. Somebody was asking me about that. So that company was called Foci, which I started during college, focus on small scale industries. And then after that, the business collapsed, and I took up a job with Cognizant, and I was working in the US for about 3 years. So until 2008, 2009, I was working, and then I came back in 2009, and that's when I started Li2. Li2 is a company focusing on technology primarily, and bringing technology to students, bridging the gap between academia and education. That was the initial plan, and we set on to do that by doing a bunch of things in colleges. So at this point, we have close to about 150 colleges that we have tied up with. And recently, we've been collaborated with Cisco and NASSCOM to set up these centers called as the Thinkubators. Across India, we have 6 centers right now operational, and close to about 2,000 students are working very closely with us in these Thinkubators. And we had about 5 startups come out of that. So that's been the journey in terms of my education and technology business. So yeah, this is how, as cluttered as it seems, this is how it's been, and this is how it will be for most of you who want to be entrepreneurs, or who are just in college, for example, will have all of these things happening. Can you see the screen, people? So a mechanical engineer, then I explored manufacturing, then I became a software engineer, and I worked in an IT company. I was handling insurance domain, building software for insurance. Then I got into business development. Then all of this started to become so confusing that, being a mechanical engineer, I got fascinated about robotics and then embedded systems, started learning Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and things on my own. And eventually got passionate about product development. And that's when I ventured into something completely new called 3D printing, right? So we happened to become one of the very first companies in India to explore 3D printing. And that's how Brahma 3 was born. right? So Brahma 3 was the first indigenously manufactured desktop 3D printer from India. This I'm talking about back in 2013. So at that time, nobody really knew what 3D printing was. Even today, it's such a new technology. In 2013, you can imagine about 6-7 years ago, when we took out the printer outside, people used to come and ask us, should I wear 3D glasses to see whatever you print? So they thought if you print something on a piece of paper, you wear glasses, it's going to pop out. So that was the kind of time when we got into 3D printing. And so that's where, business sustainability, size, market. So we were way too early in the game, but in a way it worked out well for us because our strategy initially was to sell a lot of 3D machines and put it into the market. But right now we have kind of diversified into more of a consulting firm in emerging technology, rapid prototyping. So we work with large organizations right now to move their conventional manufacturing processes to 3D printing and rapid prototyping. So that's how the evolution of entrepreneurship takes place. So if you see the clutter that you see here, this is true for most of you. So I think, some of you will be at this point thinking about, after my education, should I do higher education? Should I go to the US or some other country to study? Should I do my master's? Should I do my PhD? Or should I take up a job for 2 years and then do MBA? So many hundreds of things that will come into your head. So which is good, which is fair enough, and because confusion is the basis for you to kind of explore and evolve. So from that standpoint, don't get startled because nobody will have clarity. The whole purpose of this exercise of exploring entrepreneurship is about getting this clarity. So if you go back to this slide here, which I was talking about, that is exactly what it is. Try and continuously define your goal, your personal aspirations, and slowly things will take shape. So now, if you look back, when I started Foci, it was focusing on small industries because somebody was asking, right, why it failed. It failed simply because it was a consulting firm and we were in college and I didn't really have a equipped team. We were actually a team of 3 partners who started this, 2 people and then 1 more person joined. And then we had close to about 20 people whom we convinced to work with us, either as internship or as consulting basis. But all of them were youngsters in their 20s, 21, 22 years old. And nobody really had any idea of what a small scale industry is and how it functions or what's the value proposition we can bring. So there was no money in this game. The idea was great, but then it collapsed for the reason that we didn't have experience. So that is why that question, if you look back, I'll again go back to this, point where, sustainability and size, resources, all of these points become very important. At that time, we didn't have resources. We had a grand vision. We had aspiration. We had so many things. We had tolerance for risk. I was able to take a lot of risk. I used to cut classes. In fact, my 6th semester, I was all the time outside trying to do this. We, in fact, did about 3 or 4 projects where companies paid us also. It's not like the business did not do well. But then it was not enough for us to really add meaningful value to the customer in the end, right? So from that perspective, the business had to kind of shut shop at that point. And then we kind of, I moved on, took up a job, and came back. And then LI2 was born. So in 2008, 2009, I set up LI2 Innovations. That company essentially focused on education. We wanted to, as a mechanical engineer wanting to explore electronics, I knew that the world is moving in a direction where you really don't have fixed domains, or you really don't have fixed what you call as departments, or I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm a robotics engineer. It doesn't work that way. So, I thought, why not expose technology to students? Why not give them the opportunity to pick up what they want? So from that perspective, Li2 was started, and the idea was very simple. We picked up robotics because robotics is very exciting. So once we got a robot, we got the students to build it. Then we let them explore and build something more out of it. And through that, we were able to teach technologies like IoT, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. But something very interesting started to happen in this process. The thing was, in 2010, we realized that we became a company which had so much of technology understanding that we could start consulting. So that is when we started consulting companies like Bosch and IBM and a few other companies, where we started building solutions for them because we were working in these spaces like IoT, robotics, industrial automation. So we started doing these things ourselves. So that's when Li2 Technologies was set up, and today we are operating with Li2 Technologies as a partner for the Cisco Incubator program. And in 2013, we explored completely into something new, that is 3D printing. And today we have Brahma 3 as an entity. So at this point, I am kind of shuffling between education, consulting, and 3D printing, and around these three areas. That's my kind of work that I do. So somebody is asking, what's the full form of Li2? So Li2, actually, we didn't know what to name the company. So we just I was attending a session, and then there they were talking about listen, learn, innovate, implement, 4 stages of innovation or something like that. So just made it LLII, so it became Li2, Li the whole square or whatever you want to call it. So I call it as Li2 innovations. So that's how Li2 was born. But today, it listen and learn we have removed because we've moved more towards technology. So we call it as lead, innovate, implement is our motto. It really doesn't stand for anything. It's just a proper noun, Li2. And Brahma is creation. So we just called it Brahma 3. 3 is for you to imagine. It's 3 dimensions or 3 worlds or whatever you want to call it, right? So that's basically what it is. Apart from this, as an entrepreneur, I am also involved in a few startups in medical space, medical technology, as well as we're investing into a few companies in this space. And the second thing is, something interesting that I'm also looking at is F&B, food and beverages. A couple of my family members are exploring that area. So what I'm trying to tell you is there is no specific restriction on what you can do as long as you're clear on the aspirations of how you want to scale or how you want to do things and what's your tolerance for risk. So, but at never at any point in time, I need to also warn you that, I did not do all of these things together, right? I started Li2, then Li2 Technologies happened, then Brahma happened, and then something else, investment, and all of that started to happen later. So it's not like all of these things are being done together. In fact, I also have to admit, back in 2013, when we were doing Brahma 3, the focus was lifted off Li2 for about 6 to 8 months. The whole team started to focus on product development, which was great because we were able to build out the product within a year, and within 6 months, we were able to launch it and everything. But what happened is the core business took a hit, and Li2 started to suffer in terms of organization structure, in terms of business expansion and all of this, because the focus shifted. So never, if you want to do more than one thing, never jump ships without ensuring proper line of succession, the role of founder becomes very important. So rebuilding both the organizations, decoupling them, and then putting them back together was also a huge challenge. So it's not just about exciting ideas and following it. So that was a small mistake that we did, but luckily, it didn't really impact us that much. Beyond about a year and a half, we had to kind of do a shakedown. But sometimes it could be very risky, where the other company could have potentially shut down. So this is how this is the background. So at this point, if you want to ask something, you can go ahead and ask me. And Brahma was launched in TechCrunch in Berlin and in Kochi in the Inc. conference in 2013. And since then, we are designing, manufacturing, and selling these machines. So this is broadly my little background in technology space. So currently with Thinkubator, our focus revolves around doing the same thing for students and giving them some innovation opportunity. So you must have already visited the Thinkubator website, tqb.li2.in. In that, if you go to Impact, you can very clearly see why we are passionate about what we do and how you can see it's been close to about 400, 500 days now, close to 2,000 students. And the best part is we are happy to share with you is that we have about 4 or 5 startups that came out of this, right? So they are incubated in the NASSCOM product incubator, 10,000 startups, as well as 2 of them are from IIT BHU, and they have their own incubation that's there. So this is the goal, and we'd like to see you people also come forward and see how we can work with you. So at this point, I would like you to ask any questions. Then I will go into some more detailing on how we work on your ideas and what we can do. So I just thought it would be meaningful for me to give out a little bit of background so that you can ask me relevant contextual questions regarding your ideas. Anything to do with embedded systems, anything to do with robotics, 3D printing, technology per se, education per se is something that maybe I can add some value to your questions here. But obviously, how to set up a company is the most basic question that I would be addressing in the next 5 minutes. So now we made this guide. I don't know how many of you worked on this guide, like the Entrepreneur's Guide to Big Issues. So this is a first step to design thinking, because we are working on goals, aspirations, scale, but they're all in different pieces. Now, how you can bring that together is through a very, very, very simple framework, which we call as a design thinking framework. Okay. So there is this first word. Everybody starts with idea, right? I think most of you would have started with idea, but if you see the design thinking framework, idea comes as a third step. Okay? Idea comes as a third step, not as the first step. The first step in design thinking is empathize. Empathy is where you understand. For example, a doctor can empathize with you. They cannot sympathize. Because if they sympathize with you, they'll sit and start crying next to you. That is not going to work. But a doctor clearly knows how much pain you're going through and tries to give a solution to that. That is empathy. Similarly, as an entrepreneur, you should start with empathy, right? That is, empathy is not emotion. Everybody takes this wrong, thinks that when I tell people in design thinking sessions to empathize, they start talking about, oh, that person is going through this problem. I want to solve that person's problem. No. It's not about social service. It is about understanding clearly what the other person requires, what they need. As simple as that. It ends there. That's why in our case, in LI2 was able to do well with its training programs, because we empathize with the fact that students are really, really, really excited about robotics. Okay. There is no sympathy here. I am not saying, oh, students are not able to study, so I'm going to make them study. No. I understood, or LI2 as a company, we understood that robotics is exciting. And if we use robotics as a medium to teach science and math to children, they will enjoy. That was the simple insight that we had. And that is where we empathized, saying the empathy with the student was to make it exciting for them. Definition then happened of our business was that we will bridge the gap between academy and industry through hands-on learning. And the type of hands-on learning that we will do is something that is futuristic. That is something that is 2 years, 3 years, 4 years away. So that's the empathy part. The definition is clear. Now we started ideating. I am just doing a design thinking process of our company. you can do it on your idea and your business idea, because this is very, very important. So we empathized, we defined that we are going to bridge the gap between industry and academia through hands-on learning. That was the idea. And we said workshop model, lab model, and entrepreneurship model is the best way. So we started to do small workshops, and those became our prototypes. And from these workshops, we started to learn, and we defined a lab structure, and that's how Thinkubator was born, right? So we keep doing this process and eventually implement, right? We keep going to market, we keep meeting, customers and clients and students, and we test it out. Then the feedback comes, we go back to define, we change the way we approach it, and it keeps going. At this point, is everybody clear about this framework of design thinking? Empathy, define, ideate, prototype, test, and repeat. Is this clear? These are very important, because sometimes what happens is, you will talk to 100 people, they'll say it's great, it is not great, but then some level of clarity will be required from your side. So for that clarity, it is important that you put these things together. All right. But in the end of the day, what matters is you understand the definition, you understand the resources or sustainability and scale, and you start hiring, or then you start building. There are three important questions that you ask when you're building a team. Okay. First and foremost, what do they know? Right. So if you have a team member that you want to join, it's not about do you know them, because most of the time when you start a business, invariably in college, they're going to be your best friend that you will start with. But is it the right combination? That's the question that you need to answer. So these are the things that you might need to think through. What do they know? And how what they know is going to match into your definition, how it's going to come into scale, how it's going to come into how it's going to bring your risk down. So that's the first point. What do they know, right? So once you're clear about what do they know, then you can look at whom do they know, because these are two different things. So what do they know is associated with the technology aspect, with the IP aspect, and with the core product aspect itself. Whom do they know is more related to taking this to market. It's about marketing, it's about positioning, it's about branding, it's about business execution in terms of scaling. So all of these things will come into picture when you start considering whom do the person know, which would help you build out the network. So that's the second question that you ask. The third question is, how are they known? Right? So this is very, very important when you talk of capital. Somebody was talking about investors and investment and things like that. Please understand that investors and venture funds and all of whoever it is not about money, right? It is not about funding. Please understand that. Money you can get from bank also, money you can get a loan also, but it's not about that. Your investors, your mentors, and they are the people who will actually take this organization to the next level. So whenever you're choosing an investor, you should understand, do their vision align with your vision? Will they provide resources other than money to scale? Because somebody I might give you $1 million check, but in the next 1 year, you might just dissolve that money and do not know what to do. But somebody else might come and say, I'll just give you 1 lakh rupees, but you can use my name, right? And if that person is somebody who is a CEO or a managing director of a multinational company, then which is more valuable, right? That's why I think in the starting part, somebody said investors are very important. No, investors are very important at a certain stage. Once you have technology sorted, once you have your business growth strategy sorted, that's when investment will come. Because money is there in the market always, right? So this is a market economy. Please understand. So money is there in the market. If your idea is good, if your execution plan is good, people will fund you. But finding the right kind of people who will back you for the long run is more important. So don't value an investor by the percentage of equity they're asking or the amount of the money they're putting. Value it based on the true value proposition that they bring in. Very, very important. And it's a very tough question to answer because most of you would have started up with your friends, right? So at some stage after 1 year, you need to think through. Somebody wants to leave. What happens that time? And how do you scale? So most of the times the companies get into trouble after a year or two once they finish their engineering or once they finish your education, when the real game starts, when it starts to fizzle out. So please pay attention to this. It is the most important critical point that anybody, any investor, any partner will look at for scale and sustainability of a company. The first and foremost thing is, are you clear? Who is the entrepreneur? Who is the core team? And what is their idea? The next thing that investors look at, or the business scalability that it depends on, is how good can they execute the strategy. But before they look at how good they can execute the strategy, first they look at who is behind it, what they are doing, what is their vision, and are they reliable. That's the first thing they'll see. Next they'll see is the idea that they're telling meaningful. Then the third thing they'll see is how can I help them to make this happen, right? So that's the last part. So I hope the elements of team is clear to you people. So there is something else. So from idea to impact and prototyping. I'll just, these are a few things that I wanted to talk about. So I've just noted down some points. We spoke about risk, but we didn't talk about reward. Everybody thinks business is a risk, but then as an entrepreneur, how I think, or how you should be thinking, is how to lower my risk. It might appear like a huge risk for people outside, but you should know what is the level of risk you're taking, right? This is very, very important, right? It might feel like, oh, this fellow quit his job and he's doing something like this, right? But then if you're clear, you need to know what is the level of risk versus what is the level of reward that you can get. So entrepreneurship or business is not about risk. It's about, please note this down, it's about lowering your risk and increasing your reward. How can you get maximum reward with lowest risk? The perception outside is this way. There is a lot of risk entrepreneurs will take, and if it fails, they're gone, and things like that. But that's not true if you think about it. Right? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. You're all students. I'll tell you where is the risk and where is the reward. If you start a company in college, okay, and that company fails, is it a good thing for your career or a bad thing for your career? You know what? It's a good thing. You know why? One is for experience. The other thing is, from your graph, you are doing something that is meaningful to you. And as a company, if I come to hire, the first question that I ask is, what have you done beyond your academics? And then I work through that and then try and pick up somebody, try and hire somebody. I don't go and look at, oh, you got 90% in mathematics, very good, come. No, that those days are gone. If I want to hire 5,000 people, then I will look at those things, not because I want to hire the best. Companies look at your marks because they don't have time. Because they do not have time to talk to 10,000 students and figure out who is good or bad. So because they don't have a choice, they do something which is easier. They just look at your marks and they assume that, okay, this person is at least studious and this person will put an effort. So let me hire that person and then train that person. That's how they think, right? So the risk versus reward, as a college student, I would say starting up is better. What kind of risk perception you have and what kind of risk appetite you have, right? Risk perception is very important. That is, you understand whether this is a risk or not. So that is a risk. But what people think, my family also and other, when I started, they said, hey, you had such a good job in the US, you quit that, you came back, such a big risk you're taking. But then I know inside that it is not such a big risk because I enjoy this more. And at the same time, I'm also earning at least 50-60% of my salary. So, which is a great thing. And that salary is coming from the business that I am doing and which I am passionate about. So that's the risk and reward perception. For somebody outside, they might think, oh, he quit a IT job and he's doing this, it's so risky. But for you, you know that by quitting the IT job and taking this, I'm able to earn and cover myself. So that part is very important. The reward part, nobody will see it. If you don't see that, and if you just say, okay, let me see after 1 year whether I'll make money or not, then it is a stupid mistake. And it's a massive mistake because you're getting into something which you don't know. So at least the basics should be covered. Like, okay, this business can support me for 6 months. I can do this, or I'm ready because I have this backup plan. In 6 months, if it doesn't work, then I have to look at some other option. You need to do this. Otherwise, you keep digging your own grave. Oh, let me push it for 3 months. Let me push it for 3 months. It doesn't work. Right? Oh, just positivity doesn't work in entrepreneurship. 99% of the companies fail because of this one thing, where they think taking risk, being aggressive, yes, I will do it. Yes, I will do it. Nothing of that works. That is stupidity. So because you're strong, you'll go and hit the wall. Things don't work that way. Things work only if it is designed to work, right? So from that perspective, risk versus reward is very, very, very important for you to understand. And always a successful business is low risk, high reward. Remember that. It's not the other way around. Now I come to the next point. Advantage and unfair advantage. Okay. So as students, you people have an unfair advantage that if you fail, nothing is going to happen. Right? That's an unfair advantage. These are advantages which are unfair. What do you mean by unfair is something that you already have, the other person does not have. Is it cheating? No, it's not cheating. Please understand. Unfair advantage is not cheating. Unfair advantage is a situation you are in which is more rewarding for you than other people. So if anything like that exists, you must leverage that, right? For instance, if you are from a top college and if you have an incubator in your college, then maybe that is a good place to go and explore rather than somebody who does not have that, right? So that's how you look at it. So from idea to impact, there is something called as insight. So always look for learnings and keep building towards in that process. And insight is only, if you notice, insight is not about some information about this and that. Insight is only about value proposition. What is the value that you can, or your idea or your solution can bring? Always keep asking that question. Why will somebody talk to me? Why will somebody want to work with me? Why will somebody buy my product? What's in it for them? Am I giving it free? Okay, if I give it free, can I still make it successful? If I give it free, is it value for them? Or if I sell it for $10,000, it is value for them. That's what you need to think through. So I think with this, I have touched upon important points like, risk versus reward, how to build a team, looking at unfair advantages, and then idea to impact. What matters is what you're trying to solve. What story are you trying to tell, right? So it works that way. So for us, by building Brahma, the story we were trying to tell was that we can build a product from scratch, and it is meaningful to the market in India, and people will be able to buy it, adopt to this solution, is what we were trying to attack. It was not like we will invent a 3D printer. 3D printer was already there, but it was not there here, locally manufactured. So we wanted to attack that direction. We wanted to play geography as the primary game plan there, right? And then bring in technology elements which are global standard, that is internationally acclaimed standards. We wanted to bring in an Indian product. So that was our strategy. Okay. So you might be wondering as students, what company to start? Should I start a company or not? Right? So in that case, usually you're not alone, right? If you're alone, then you start something called as a proprietorship. For example, if you're a designer, you want to do some photography, or you're an artist or something like that, where the whole business depends on you, right? Or you want to set up a small shop and you're going to sit in that shop. then you can do a proprietorship. But we are not talking about that. We are talking about a little larger kind of business where you have partners, right? So, say a partnership company. So please note down the difference. In partnership, what happens is you have something called as a partnership deed. That is, two or three people come together. They have an agreement, just like a rent agreement, saying we are all partners and we will do this business. And if this much money comes, we will share this business money accordingly. But in partnership, the problem is there is no limit to liability. What does that mean? In partnership, no limit to liability means whatever you own inside or outside of the business is in the framework of the business. Means if you take a loan from somebody, okay, say you take 10 lakh rupees to do the business and the business fails. At that point, if you have a car which is worth 10 lakh rupees, they can come after that car, because in partnerships or proprietorship, your assets and you and your business are the same thing. So there is no limit to liability. So it is extremely risky to do technology business or high investment business in partnerships. If you're running a small design studio, you build websites for people, you build things like that, or if you do some kind of services that you provide as individuals or as a group of people, it is okay. But anything beyond, which involves technology, which involves IP, which involves funding, then partnership is not advised. Okay, that's the first question. So if you just want to play around, try it out, then maybe a partnership will work, because partnership is low cost. You don't have to invest too much money in partnerships. Just spending about 7,000 to 8,000 rupees, you can actually have a partnership firm coming up, and then you set up a bank account. Your PAN number is enough to start the business. So that way, partnership is meaningful, right? Now, while filing your taxes, also your personal taxes and the partnerships taxes will be linked. So if you are making some revenue there, the taxation is dependent. So you and the business are not completely separate. Okay. And then the next thing is LLP, which means limited liability partnership. That is, it is also a partnership, but the liability is limited. So what happens here is whatever you put into the business, the limit of liability is within that. That means if you have a car which was not bought from the company, it was your own car, or you have a house which is your own house which you did not make from this business, then if this business fails, then your creditors or anybody cannot come behind that until unless you have pledged it. Until unless you have said, okay, this is my car, take my car and give me money, then they can take it. But if you have not done that, then your liability is restricted, right? So that is an LLP, which is the safest form of partnership business you can do, because that's the next level. First is partnership, then is LLP. That's the next level where the investment is lower. Maybe about 20,000 rupees you will have to invest to set up this whole setup. And it does not have as much complications as a private limited company. Okay. So the first advice that people give is to set up a LLP. Okay. But LLP has some restrictions. What I mean by that is the management and the ownership of the company is the same. The people who run the company and people who own the company is the same. That is, tomorrow you have an LLP, but you are busy working somewhere. You take up a job, your LLP is running here, and something goes wrong, then they can come after you, because it is your company and you're limited by partnership. So you're the owner, right? So that is where issues happen. In private limited, they try to address that problem by bringing what we call as shares and directors. Okay, so in private limited company, Your risk is limited by your shares. That's why it's called limited. So if there are 100 shares in the company, if I have 30 shares, you have 30 shares, somebody else has 40 shares, then I own 30% of the company, you own 30%, the other person owns 40% of the company. Okay, these are the number of shares, and your liability is restricted to that. What it means is, if the company collapses tomorrow, all you can come after is my shares. Okay, that is, if the company made a loss and if the bank wants the money back, then all they can do is take the shares from you and say, okay, these shares can be sold to somebody else, but they can't come and touch it until unless you have done some fraud. So there are a lot of frauds that are happening in today's world. Why they are all being arrested is because they took the money from the bank saying, I will do business, and then they use that money for personal reasons. They bought something else or they moved that money out. That is a fraud. But if they've genuinely taken the money and done the business genuinely and the business has failed, then nobody can be arrested or nobody. So that way, private limited is the safest. But the problem with private limited is because your risk is lesser in that, the government has a lot of restrictions in terms of running the company. What I mean by that is you need to file your taxes regularly. Every month you need to file your sales tax. The GST. You need to do your audits. You need to have your board resolution in place. All of these processes are there, which is little expensive because you need to have an auditor or somebody to do it. So your annual cost on running a private limited might be a little more. That is about 30 to 40,000 rupees a year you might land up spending. So, and then your setup cost will be about 25 to 30,000 rupees to set up a private limited. So that way, if your vision is clear, all investors would prefer to invest in a private limited company because though they are owners, they will make you the director and they'll make you the management to run the company. So they are not at risk. So if something illegal is done or some activity is done inside the company, then the directors, the board of directors are responsible. In that, there is an executive board, there is a non-executive. Executive board is responsible. So that way, there is a clear differentiation between the owners of the company, who are called promoters, and the runners of the company, who are the board of directors. Okay. Sometimes the owners and board of directors can be same, but in many companies, I might own 90% of the company in shares, but I might not be on the board of the company also. It means the running of the company is not under my control. So people as investors would prefer that. So this is how the three differentiations are there. So my advice is, as a college student, you probably start exploring with an LLP. At the right point in time, pivot to a private limited company. Until unless you're very sure of your partners and you're having a long-term game and you already have some capital coming in, then start with a private limited. LLP is probably the best start for students, I would say. Until unless it's a very small business, you're doing some photography or something like that, then partnership is good enough. Can we start an LLP and then convert into a private limited? It's a little complicated process, but the answer is yes, you can do that. Okay, so typically it is like the LLP gets dissolved and the IP moves into a new private limited company. It does not convert. LLP does not convert to a private limited company, but the process is possible to be done. It's not so complicated. The other problem with private limited, it's not really a problem, is even it's not a problem, but in case you're in college right now and you want to shut down the company, you need to still continue filing for the next 3 years. You have to show your books, you need to run your books. You cannot simply close the company so easily because your liability is lesser. The government will still hold you accountable for 3 years after the closure of the company. So to shut down a private limited company is difficult. Okay. So at this point, I myself have direct association with 3 private limited companies that I have. So one of them we wanted to close, and then the process is still going on. Right? You strike off the company and still file your taxes nil. Maybe you're not doing any business, but nil returns should be filed. Your board resolution should be filed, and all of that. But all of this auditors will do. All I'm saying is you need to spend that extra 20,000 rupees. That's all. It's not so complicated that you should not do it. but you need some process, more process than an LLP. The best recommendation is go for a private limited if you're very clear. If you're not very clear, at least go for an LLP. Avoid partnerships because partnerships liability is much higher. LLP is easier, faster, quicker, cheaper, safer. Okay, so my primary advice is start an LLP. At some stage, move to a private limited. Okay, so that's about what kind of company to start with. So now there are a few things that I think even in the questions I had asked you about MSME and things like that, right? So now let us assume that you started the company. How can you get unfair advantage? How can you leverage? That's the thing, right? This Udyog Aadhaar is a website. This is one of the questions that I'd asked, right? National portal for registration of micro, small, and medium enterprises. Okay, you go here and you can register yourself, right? With your Aadhaar, without your Aadhaar, you can register. So why should you register as an MSME? That's the question, right? If you are a registered MSME with the order book, right? Especially if you're a woman entrepreneur, right? There is this e-mudra, Pradhan Mantri Yojana, and all of those things where you're eligible for about 10 lakhs of loan. Okay. The second thing is you get about 1 to 2% rebate on your interest. If you get into ISO certification for your company because you're doing a product, for example, if you're doing an electric vehicle and things like that, you might need ISO. You will get close to about full reimbursement on that. Then if you do IPR things, up to 80% of your funding can for patents is you will get a thing. And most important is if you do a business with a big company, for example, like a big company, they gave you a purchase order and they did not pay you. If you have an MSME registration, the government has, and you prove to them that you have actually delivered the product, the government will cover for that invoice amount, right? Or the company that you raise the invoice for will be forced to pay you the money within 6 months. Be recognized as a startup by the Indian government, you need to register your company. Very, very, very important. The registration process is very simple, but you need to do it. So one of the questions that I had asked is if you're a biotechnology company, right? What is your eligibility? You need to be in business up to 10 years, right? So you're either a 1 month-old company or a 10-year-old company. You still can be a startup, right? So that is one. Or your turnover should be less than 25 crores, okay? This was also a question that I had asked maybe. So annual turnover not exceeding 25 crores. So please understand that a startup does not mean a small company, right? Within the 7 years of your company, if you make profit in year number 3, you can take all the profit and say you're putting it back in the company and not pay any taxes. So the government will give you tax holiday. So that is where you start saving. So up to 3 times you can do that. 3 years in 7 years, you can use the profits back into the company without paying any taxes, right? And long-term capital gains. So if you're a startup and you invest in technology or you invest in, say, for example, some kind of an IP, and then that IP becomes big in 3 years, you sell that IP, then you get exemption on tax on that. Okay, that's huge because capital gain tax is one of the most important taxes in corporate sector. Where if I have a certain innovation of technology and I sell that to somebody for, I invested 10 lakh rupees and I sold it for 1 crore, the balance amount will be taxed not only as income but also gain of capital. That is, I have gained 90 lakhs. So there is an additional tax on that. So saying capital gain. So if your company moves very quickly, if you're not registered under the Startup India program, you're treated as a normal big company, right? All of these starts to come into picture. And this is where converting from an LLP to private limited comes into picture. What I mean by that, somebody was asking, I think Manish was asking, can I convert? So say, for example, you register into a LLP in Startup India program. And then after some stage, an investor wants to come and fund you. And the investor says, I will give you 5 crores or whatever funding, but I want you to be a private limited. So what you do is you take this LLP, you do the technology transfer to this new private limited company and shut down this LLP. In this process, when you do a technology transfer, there is a certain valuation of the old technology to the new technology in private limited. This attracts capital gain because of a technology transfer. If you're already registered as a startup, then this is waived off. So it's very easy to transfer. Otherwise, you need to pay the government extra money to do these processes. And all of these things come into picture, right? So you can just read through these things. But broadly, why I'm telling you this is there is a lot of benefits and it's free of cost. Please remember. So, for example, if you're doing an IP registration, right, up to 80% of your IP registration is waived off. That is, if I'm applying for patent, your patent application cost is about 80,000 rupees. So you just pay about 5,000 or 4,000 rupees, and the rest is waived off if you're registered as a startup. So it's good. So you save a lot of money. But remember, it's only on the fees. Obviously, if you get a lawyer and all that, the lawyer fees is there. But still, at least whatever benefit you get, you can do that. And the other advantage is, in case you make loss, right, you can carry forward the losses to the next year. And say, last year I made this loss, so this year I made profit. But because last year I made loss, please subtract that loss in this year's profit, and then I'll pay taxes. That you cannot do in normal companies. So in my company, we are no longer a startup. So in my company, if I made loss of 5 lakhs last year, and this year I made a profit of 10 lakhs, I have to pay tax for 10 lakhs, not for 5 lakhs. But you as a startup can go and say, because we are a startup, last year we made 5 lakhs loss, because government is not going to give you money back. Government is going to only charge you money for the profits you make. Government is not going to protect you for your losses. But if you are a startup registered, then in certain special cases, if you made a loss of 3 lakhs and you made a profit of 10 lakhs this year, you move the 3 lakhs here and you pay tax only for that 7 lakhs. Right? There are a lot of terms and clauses for this, but your auditors will be able to solve it for you and you will save some money. Right? So these are all some meaningful things that you get out of Startup India program and MSME registration. Okay. Now the last thing I would like to talk about is grants applications. So there is something called as Department of Science and Technology, DST. Please look at that. There are a lot of grants. If you are a biomedical company, there is something called as BIRAC, PIRAC. Please look at that. So BIRAC is there. So BIRAC.nic.in. So if you are working on anything related to biotechnology, there are funding available. Startups supported 713 startups, products and technologies. All of this incubated space, they do all of this. IP generated 180 patents, right? So it's amazing. The amount of funds also is like, here it is, like funds generated by startups is $125 million, right? So it's good. So here, Biotechnology Industry Research Assessment Council. So if you're working on anything to do with biotechnology, anything to do with medical systems, medical devices, IoT related stuff, these people support it, right? So the best thing that you can do is use a platform like the Thinkubator, because NASSCOM is involved, IITs are involved. Try and incubate yourself in one of these. For example, this is something that you might not know. You might not be a student of IIT, okay? But you can go and get a partner who is an alumni, or get a professor who is working in IISc or Indian Institute of Technology. And if your idea is great, they can incubate you there virtually. What I mean by that is, you don't really have to go and sit in IIT Chennai or IIT Delhi or somewhere. You can be in your own hometown, but your company can be registered there. Once you do that, if you apply for a BIRAC grant, recently one of our companies where I'm involved got a funding for 65 lakhs from BIRAC, and another company got about 30 lakhs from DST. Karnataka government has, I don't know how many of you are there from Karnataka here, but we have something called as a Vision Fund. It's called VGST. They fund about 25 lakhs just for the idea, right? Not even for the prototype. Your pitch is good, they fund up to 30 lakhs. Typically, they give between 15 to 20 lakhs. So these opportunities are available. And for women entrepreneurs, there are more schemes where there is a certain bracket. About 20% of the fund should go to women entrepreneurs. So you have a better chance of getting these things. So you should explore these, right? And I know that it's a very short notice, but what I can do is I can share my email ID with you, and you can stay in touch and you can ask me questions about this. I can guide you through. Okay. On this note, I would like to open the floor for some questions, because for me this is important. I want to see more entrepreneurs coming out. So anytime I'm willing to help and support. Great. So I'll expect an email from you on .in if with a feedback. And if you want the certificate for this session, I think there is a questionnaire that you need to close out, do a quiz or something on the portal. Finish the questionnaire and get a certificate for yourself. If that is of any use, take it. Okay. Anything else? Can we end the session? Okay. Anytime, if you have any questions pop up, just drop me a message or just give me reference saying that you attended this session. So put Thinkubator or some keyword where I can relate to what's happening here and I can respond to you. Okay. Look forward to your emails. Okay. Thank you so much. Wish you the best. Stay safe.